This video explores what I think is the most important theme of the last trailer. What's wrong with having hairy legs? Didn't Jesus have hairy legs, arms, armpits? Not to mention all the other bodily complications that go along with living in an era with a fig-heavy diet where they hadn't yet invented toilet paper. How did that affect early Christianity as it developed? I'm not a theologian, and it's complicated, but Christian theology across most traditions affirms that Jesus was fully God and fully man. How to talk about this was hotly debated in the early church, and according to the history books, is by no means settled. While we're talking history, I should say that secular historians agree that Jesus was a real historical figure. He was a Jewish man who was executed in Jerusalem by crucifixion under the Roman occupation by the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. But to quote Oxford historian Diarmaid MacCullough, we may be threatened by the implications of Jesus' humanity. How can God be involved in the unhygienic messiness of everyday life and remain God? There are basic problems of human dirt, waste and decay from which devotion recoils. It's evident that people did recoil, and to get around that, some of them came up with a solution. Jesus wasn't a man, he just seemed to be. Really, he was a mystical and otherworldly spirit. This line of thinking was influenced by the Greek philosopher Plato, who talked of the material world as some poor and degenerate reflection of real reality, which is on some other plane of existence somewhere where everything is perfect. A bishop called Irenaeus in the 2nd century called these schools of thought, this Greek word that I'm totally going to butcher, gnostike-hairesis, from which we get two words, Gnosticism, referring to these schools of thought, and heresy, which we will definitely talk about at a later time. The different types of Gnosticism tend to appropriate key figures from Judaism and Christianity, and they tend to have a few things in common. They see the world and spirituality in terms of dualism, a battle between two distant and unknowable forces, the forces of good and the forces of evil, locked in some great cosmic struggle for control of the world. The evil being, or a lower tier god, is usually responsible for the creation of the material world. This is often associated with Judaism's Yahweh, or Christianity's creator god. They were pretty anti-Semitic. The material world is secondary, an imperfect reflection of the perfect spiritual reality. The material world is therefore bad. Bodies are bad. And you're not your body. You're some divine inner spark that's trapped in this inconvenient fleshly vehicle. Women? All of that gross stuff? Definitely bad. The Gnostic text called the Gospel of Thomas has a version of Simon Peter saying to Jesus, "Make Mary go away, because women don't deserve to live." And then Jesus says, "Oh, it's okay, because I'm going to make her a man. And any woman who wants to enter the kingdom of heaven has to turn into a man." Yeah. The answer of the problem of the bad and icky world, where there is armpits and flatulence and lady parts and people you don't like, is to escape, to transcend the material world with your inner spark to some disembodied heaven somewhere else. For Gnostics, the way to escape was secret hidden knowledge. If you knew things, the right things, the things that the people around you didn't know, and most probably the things that you paid the nice man with all the knowledge to tell you, then you'd secure your place on the great metaphorical cosmic spaceship. The potential for salvation, enlightenment, escape, belonged only to a chosen few, who had some memory of the divine spark hidden deep inside of them. Gnosticism lends itself well to conspiracy theories. Probably the classic example in popular culture is Dan Brown's novel The Da Vinci Code, where a character discovers a secret hidden conspiracy that Jesus and Mary Magdalene had a baby, and she uncovers the truth about her real identity and her place in the world. So Gnosticism is attractive. It would allow you to feel special, like you knew things that the people around you didn't. It also would allow you to disconnect your responsibility from the material world. If your body is meaningless and temporary, then you don't need to take responsibility for looking after it. Apparently in the ancient world, this could go either way. Either you embraced Docetism and denied your body, or libertinism and decided that since your body didn't really matter very much, you could do whatever you wanted with it. Well, hey! And if the world is bad, and this planet isn't your permanent home and it doesn't really matter in the long run, then you're free to do whatever you want with it. It lends itself to controlling and authoritarian power structures, where the followers have power held over them by only a few who have access to the secret hidden knowledge. But some of this probably sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like the Christianity that you hear lampooned in popular culture, or that you came across on the internet, or at university Christian unions, or even at church every week on a Sunday. That version goes a little bit like this. God and the devil are engaged in some cosmic battle between good and evil, for which this world is the battleground. But that's okay because this world is bad and God has an escape plan, so his loyal followers, who are special, will get whisked off to some disembodied heaven where everything is perfect and spiritual and unchanging for all eternity. The way to get to this heaven, somewhere else, is to know the right things. So the reason that hundreds of years ago Bishop Irenaeus was so annoyed by all of this was that wasn't how he saw Christianity. He thought that Gnosticism was significantly less than freedom. Gnosticism is at odds with Christianity and Judaism because both of those religions have worldviews that start with stories about a God who created the material world and people good. Christianity insisted Jesus was flesh. A mystical spirit, for all that it seems human, can't interact with this material world in a way that is honest, that is risky, vulnerable, involves suffering, joy, compassion, and things like eating, and true human experience. The Christian Jesus wasn't a superhero or an escape fantasy that Gnosticism allowed him to be. In Christianity, God and Jesus really became human and left himself no mechanism of escape from the material or the temporal. Rather than secret knowledge, Christianity emphasised an open invitation to a common table, to communities where vulnerability and confession were encouraged, where sacrificial love centred not self, but God and others. It involved actually touching people and feeding them. The religious ceremony central to Christianity is a meal, for goodness sake. We all know where that leads. Christianity's words about the future preach not a disembodied escape going to heaven when you die, but a bodily resurrection. As the theologian Tom Wright points out, Jesus taught us to pray a prayer that no Gnostic could ever pray, that God's kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. And then there's the apostle, or saint, Paul, who potentially addresses Gnostic thinking in his first letter to the Corinthians, when he says, "We know we all possess knowledge, but knowledge puffs up, while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not yet know as they ought to know, but whoever loves truly knows." Some translations say, "Or whoever loves God is known by God." I'm glad I picked this topic early on, because it allows me to say something I want to make really clear about my intentions for this channel, and that is that I know, and I continually have to remind myself, that knowing more than someone else does not make you better than them. You know, just in case you thought I was fuzzy on the subject. I've referenced the books that I've looked at in preparing for this topic in the description section below. If you like these videos, as always, tell your friends, share on social media, and please subscribe.